We open with a landscape view of a desert wasteland environment, panning to a man on a horse looking stoically atop one of the sandstone structures in the background, looking as if he's contemplating riding off the edge. Instead, he takes a moment to sigh and veer off the platform. The man then gives a backstory on the history of the land, thinking about the long and dangerous millennia it had been since the central continent unified. We then figure out that superhuman martial arts had corrupted the emperors and caused the imperial forces to weaken, and that in the time of the descendants of the heroes that wielded martial arts for justice against the tyranny, they instead became mad dogs for the emperor, joining the imperial forces, hungering solely for power and leading the Murim world into anguish. But just when everyone began to despair, a new continent was discovered. A place where everyone could start a new beginning. Though only after riding a ship far into an endless ocean, could they reach lands with expansive plains, tall mountains and deep valleys, harsh deserts, calm rivers, a land of new beginnings. This, however, caused madmen, terrible criminals, descendants of old rulers, demonic martial artists, all to start a new life by crossing to the new continent, everyone having their own goals, selfish wills, and senses of greater good, dominating any who stand to oppose them, clashing with martial prowess, and sparking the dawn of a new martial realm. We then cut to a passage in a book, zooming out to see that this was actually our protagonist reading a writer's literature from a dead man. Panning out to reveal it to be the book from a dead man ransacked and killed, as our protagonist insults writers for being able to live a comfortable life, laying around snacking on foods while reading novels, avoiding the dangers he faces. He then commented, adding on to the story, that the only reason the first dynasty lasted the millennia was because of martial arts magical nonsense, as he then glances off in the distance, looking over the chaos, then walking away from the battlefield's aftermath to look for the spoils of war. He deduces the bandits caused this mess, and that they already took everything of value. As he peers into the chest of leftover loot, he then finds out there was a kid among them after finding a child's clothing, which the bandits either planned to sell or raise, scoffing at the absurdity and the nature of life, before getting on his horse, and after assessing the damage one more time, slowly riding off into the distance. Scene cuts to a town. We then pan to the center of the town, where a saloon stands, and hear the sounds of losing streaks of some poor fool, along with the bustling chatter of the patrons. We then overhear a man talking about the convoy that was destroyed by bandits, and that our protagonist went through. He states that only one of the couriers made it back alive, calling the Martial Alliance useless as he sets his drink down on the table while looking around at the bandits within town that never get taken down by the marshals. Scoffing at their mere presence, he states that nowhere is safe anymore. His friend tells him to keep it down before they hear him and cause trouble, to which he drops a bar, saying you don't avoid shit just because it's scary. You only avoid it because it's nasty. At that moment, someone approaches the entrance of the saloon. The man's friend tells him that he talks big but would never dare say it to their face. As the mysterious man enters the saloon, he is revealed to be the protagonist, stone-faced and prepared for any confrontation. Everyone inside glances and glares at him, his presence clearly unwelcome. He pauses for a brief moment, contemplating what he should do, before asking the bartender if there are any seats available. The bartender replies that he's welcome to sit wherever is available, though everyone remains on edge, staring him down and watching his every move like hawks until he finally sits. The bartender, trying to ease his concerns, tells him to pay no attention to the stares, explaining that everyone in town isn't used to outsiders and that the conditions around town have put everybody on edge, even though they still receive an influx of travelers. He then asks if he'd like a drink, to which our protagonist replies whatever can be made the fastest. The bartender, understanding that he may be extremely famished, instead goes to make him a quick bowl of noodles, asking him to wait patiently. Our protagonist then asks who besides him had recently come through, but before the bartender can reply, a loud yell of disdain fills the saloon, pulling both of their attention toward the commotion. A loud man continues shouting at another man for cheating, enraged by his blatant actions. The accused man sarcastically and mockingly repeats the word cheat. Our protagonist stares intently at the man, saying nothing, silently judging whether he has found the right person. The cheated man slams his fist onto the table in rage, asking if the cheater really thought he wouldn't notice his sly actions. The cheater simply mocks the attempt to expose him and says that the man is just a lousy gambler, asking why he should be accused simply because the fool walked into his trap. The cheated man questions the cheater's winning streak throughout the entire time he'd been there, to which the cheater replies that he simply sucks, seeing as everyone else besides him had won at least once. Our protagonist smirks slightly, deducing that he has found the right individual. As the bartender wonders where he might be going, the cheated man then demands to know what the man thinks he's trying to pull. The man simply stating that he had no proof, mocking the man's attempt to corner him, an innocent person without any evidence, provoking him further and insulting his intelligence. Finally, almost getting physical, the man shoves the cheater. And both, now provoked, are about to get into an altercation. But before the two can get into a full brawl, the cheater, revealed to be Yang Gwen, is tapped on the shoulder by the protagonist. As he turns around, about to say that he's busy and to piss off, our protagonist cheerfully replies that he's finally found him. Yang Gwen immediately freezes, dropping a brick in his pants, recoiling in fear as the protagonist is revealed to be Zhang Qian. Though we'll simply call him Zane. The cheated man stares in confusion at the event unfolding in front of him, asking the protagonist to celebrate his reunion later since he'd just been cheated, and before he can finish, however, Zane cuts him off, telling him that he has no business with him. And to stay out of it, Gwen awkwardly exchanges formalities, trying to seem excited that he's seeing Zane, wondering what business brought him here. Zane replying that it had been 2 months, sarcastically asking Gwen if he had been doing well. Gwen then responded frantically with the same empty formalities, but Zane bluntly says that he hadn't been doing well, and was confused as to why all of Gwen's friends always claim they're doing well whenever he finds them. Gwen asked if he actually found the others, to which Zane replies that Gwen is the last one. Growing nervous, Gwen hurriedly tries to explain himself, saying that he told them not to do it. He asked why they would con a martial artist at all, pointing out that they would have been killed if they were caught. Zane replies yet they still did it. Gwen immediately tries to run away and flee the scene, but Zane simply sighs and grabs him by the hair before he can get far, dragging him back to the table where he had been sitting and slamming his face onto it. The cheated man and everyone else in the saloon stare in awe at the scene unfolding before them, probably thinking they are about to watch a man breathe his last breath. Gwen desperately tries to reason with Zane, insisting that he truly didn't do it, though he attempts to justify his actions by pointing out that Zane stayed until everything he had was taken. Zane says that it didn't change the fact that Gwen had cheated while gambling, as he pulled a domino out of Gwen's sleeve. He then pressed Gwen even further for his money, to which Gwen stated that he had used it to pay off his bounty at the Martial Alliance. Zane, unamused by his antics, grew more aggressive and shoved his head onto the table even harder before Gwen continued, saying that there was a branch right next to the tavern. What else could he have done, since he needed to eat and sleep? Zane then picked him up and asked whether he was completely flat broke or not. Gwen pointed to today's earnings back at the table, telling Zane to use them as reimbursement. Zane scoffed but accepted it over nothing, pushing Gwen aside onto the floor to retrieve the money while everyone stared in silence. The cheated man then asked Zane to stop because the money had been won through him, saying that it was all of his. Zane, however, not caring, told him to get the money from Gwen later. This set the man off, and he angrily asked what Zane was talking about before lunging at him to stop him and retrieve his money, asking if he didn't understand it being his. Zane though grabbed his arm and hurled him over his shoulder onto a table, causing him to hit his nose before crashing to the floor and sliding across it, breaking it in the process. The rest of his gang members charged at Zane from behind, preparing to beat him, only for him to dodge their attacks and counter with a blow to one man's chest before grabbing the collars of the two and pulling them together so they could think of a way for the man to get his money back, fracturing their skulls and knocking them unconscious. Both men slumped to the floor like bags of sand. The rest of the bar patrons stared in awe, while Gwen watched nervously, wondering what kind of beating he would receive next since he still hadn't fully paid Zane back. Zane glanced back at him, making it clear he wasn't finished with him. Gwen asked what Zane was doing, saying that he had already paid. Zane replied that it clearly wasn't enough, and Gwen however threw his teeth, claiming that he had nothing else. Meanwhile, the cheated man got back up, irritated that his nose had been broken and at the disrespect he had received. He pointed to Zane, told him that he'll regret it despite Zane apologizing, and continuing that he had lost far more than a small amount of money to Gwen. Before he could continue, however, the man stormed out of the saloon in a fit of anger, refusing to accept Zane's actions. Confused by the man's response, Zane questioned what his problem was and though Gwen was talking about the man. Zane cut him off to ask about the rest of the money he owed and what he planned to do, threatening to shatter his core and leave him crippled. Gwen tried to talk his way out of this, asking what good that would do seeing that he had such little strength. Zane however threatened him further, nearly taking action, causing Gwen to finally give in. Dropping his fake smile, Gwen said that he had something valuable in his pocket. He reluctantly pulled it out, revealing a jade ring. He claimed it was something he had recently obtained through legitimate means and that it was authentic, saying that as long as Zane found a real buyer, he could get a good price for it. Gwen worried that Zane wouldn't consider it enough and stared at him anxiously, waiting for his decision before asking whether it would suffice. Zane held the ring firmly and told Gwen that it was enough before turning his attention back to the bartender and asked, uncaring of all the chaos that he caused, when his noodles would be ready. The scene then cuts to the food he had been patiently waiting for. Gwen sat next to him, telling him that it wasn't the time to be eating noodles so casually. He continued that leaving at that moment would be most critical for his reputation, saying this in memory of the food they had eaten in the games they played. He expressed to him that he'd regret breaking the man's nose from earlier. Zane's only reply was finishing his bowl. Gwen asked if he was even listening. Though after finishing his drink Zane told him to keep talking so he could find out more about the man from earlier. Gwen continued, even though the man looked like a pushover, no one dares lay a finger on him because his brother is a martial arts expert renowned in these parts. Zane replied that he was also capable of martial arts, then Gwen tried to glaze him, praising Zane's skill. Sarcastically asking who didn't know of Zane's skill? Though Gwen only ended up figuring out after he saw Zane use the sword he had that looked as if it was for nothing more than decoration. Zane told him to stop beating around the bush and wasting his time. Gwen replied, it's only his brother. He's from an evil sect, unrivaled in town, called the Dogma sect. Zane then questioned whether or not there was a martial branch around there, supposedly keeping them under tabs, wondering how both could exist at once. Gwen figured out he was interested, asking him to pay a silver coin for the information. Zane only replied with a visual warning of violence if he asked for money again after what he pulled. Gwen folded immediately, willing to tell him for free out of his kindness, before slyly commenting that his personality has always been. Continuing that they weren't an evil sect on the outside, but the branch manager had a relationship with him, so as long as they stayed in their lane, the branch manager would leave them alone. Zane asked if he was scamming the little brother. Gwen though tried to justify it as everyday business, saying that they'd stay in their lane. Zane then sarcastically commented that the martial alliances must be working well if he can scam. Gwen agreed, saying the residents must think the same, seeing that they are loose-lipped about their issues even around an outsider like him. Zane then asked him to go and talk to the outsiders instead of speaking to him any longer, seeing that they liked him so much. Gwen then said that it would be problematic though, as the patrons stared daggers at him, wishing he would leave. Zane looked around, wary of their glares, commenting that they must be unwelcome around these parts, as even the patrons who had nothing to do with the conflict stared at them in dismay, some leaving and cursing the outsiders because of the former commotion they caused and the issue that would arise because of it. He repeated one of the bar that the patrons said earlier, the one that said they wouldn't avoid shit because they're scary, but instead because they're dirty. Zane found this corny though. Just then, after serving his food, the barkeep got Zane's attention and asked him to leave, not wanting any more commotion in his establishment, giving his money back, and requesting that he leave before the bandits come back and cause more issue. Gwen, understanding that they weren't welcome, he told Zane that they should depart before they don't come out unscathed. Zane uncaringly continued to eat his bowl and ignored both of the men's requests. To the barkeep's dismay, both of them then watched him eat slowly and uncaringly as he finished his second bowl, not paying any mind to their comments, telling both of them that they'd be fine. Gwen then asked if he was of the Imperial Forces, seeing that the sect had more than 20 people in it, and what he would do about it, telling him it's not the time to raise his ego, and that he would depart on his own. Zane only sighed uncaringly, telling Gwen that it was already too late for departure, saying that if he wanted to leave, he should have left instead of yapping. Both the bartender and Gwen looked back to the door with worry in their eyes, hearing the rumbling of the footsteps. A man with a large figure entered the door, reiterating that it was in fact too late to run, as he glared at them before entering the bar and asking his brother if it was those guys. The man, telling his brother it was, saying that they scammed him and broke his nose. His brother questioned what he meant by scam, understanding that this was nothing more than just a petty issue. Even as the man tried to explain, his brother shrugged him off and didn't care anymore. Approaching them, he noted that they weren't from town, and asked what they thought they were doing just running through his town and causing trouble. The bartender, worried, told the large-figured man that he had only gotten the tables since a couple days ago, wanting him to be careful with them. The man simply glared at him, threatening action if he spoke any further, making the bartender cower in fear and walk away, turning a blind eye to the situation as a whole. Gwen tried to get up in a hurry and get out of the situation, though Zane told him that if he didn't want to get folded first, he should stay seated. Gwen jokingly asking what he meant, as he was already sitting. Just then, more men rushed into the bar behind the large-figured man, surrounding the men on all sides and crowding around the establishment, blocking off the table's exits that Zane and Gwen were sitting at, causing Gwen to have incomprehensible worry displayed all over his face as he stuttered, unable to get any words out. The large-figured man then introduced himself as Chung Suk and told both of them that it's embarrassing, but he's the town's problem solver. He was lazing around a couple minutes ago, enjoying how peaceful it was, though it seemed like he had work to do at the moment, as he glared down at Zane. Unbothered, Zane sipped his drink from his cup, not worried about the men's presence. The man then glared back down at him, judging his demeanor. Gwen then tried to formally introduce himself to maybe go on the man's good side, telling his story of coming into the town only a couple days ago, trying to praise the man to get on his good side. He told him that he was hoping to meet a warrior like him, questioning if it was fate for him to meet a warrior so soon. He also introduced Zane and his background, as it hadn't been long that he came to town either. The man ignored everything that was said and deciphered that Gwen was the scammer his brother was talking about. Even amidst Gwen's confusion, he continued, calling Zane a thug. He painted the picture that they had come to the peaceful town to rip off the poor, law-abiding citizens and disrespect his brother, calling them nothing more than ruffians. Seeing that he was a righteous man, he couldn't turn a blind eye to this fact, saying that he would arrest them and turn them into the martial branch. He glared down at them, continuing that if they existed, they'd get hurt, so it's best not to. Zane chuckled, amused at the fact that they at least don't just go around killing people. The large-statured man reaffirmed his Warrior of Justice title in the martial arts world, saying that he would never just kill people in the middle of the day at a tavern. Though after his run-in with his brother, he shouldn't expect a free escape. He wouldn't let them off so easily, not without a scratch. He went in closer, saying that he'll turn them into a quadriplegic, and that if he didn't want that, he should exchange the private part between his legs instead. His thug companion snickered and laughed at the humor he displayed. Walk, grabbing at his part, worried for his safety, joined the rest of the members in continuing to laugh. Zane sighed, questioning if the man saw someone so calm even after all of the threats and provocation. Wouldn't he think that guy has something up his sleeve? Or the wandering guy may be in the Imperial forces? Wondering if he wasn't worried about such things. The man was surprised and recoiled in fear, worried at the implications of him being in such a high-ranking position. He told his apologies and bowed as he realized he may have made a huge mistake without even realizing it. Zane jokingly told the man that he never said he was a part of the Imperial forces, causing the man to freeze and process what Zane said, gathering his outbursting rage. Raising his head to strike, but before he could retaliate against Zane, He was already on the table, preparing a powerful kick to the man's jaw and face, sending him across the room, flying into a bunch of tables and kicking up debris. Zane stared, making sure that he had gotten him in one kick, staring at the man incapacitated on the floor, teeth knocked out, unconscious. His subordinates and the bar patron stared in awe at his feat, commenting on the man's foolishness, wanting to know if he really didn't think there were experts outside of the Imperial forces. Before one of the thugs stammered for all of them in the room to kill him, rallying all of the men together as they all charged, with the man telling him that he'll die. Zane, however, after dodging his attack, only wondered what the sloppy movements he had were, despite them being a martial arts sect, calling them just a bunch of bandits and thugs, before winding up and knocking one of them out cold with a one-punch strike to the jaw. Another came up behind him, planning to knock him out cold, but Zane saw him coming and before the thug knew what was headed for him, Zane had already charged his axe kick up and sending it toward the bandit's skull, leading to an axe kick straight to the assailant's dome, caving in his skull and contorting the man's face into an unrecognizable mess. Zane, however, prepared for more combatants, within the same motion turned around, kicking the next assailant straight in his solar plexus, knocking the wind out of him. In the same breath, swinging on the next assailant, swiftly liver punching him. Then for the man behind him, sending a swing from the side, shattering his face with a swift blow. He then set up his stance, feinting a kick, before throwing a punch, knocking another out cold with a rib-shattering punch to his core. After jumping behind him and winding up for the next guy, he did the opposite, feinting a punch, just for him to throw a side kick, knocking him out cold. The man then stared at Zane with dead eyes, his jaw hanging dislocated before he slumped to the floor, scaring the remaining thugs behind him. He stood in a ready pose, prepared for the rest to charge at him, waiting for the next to lunge, though they just stood in fear, and when he started to approach them, they simply told him not to come closer as he stood around their defeated comrades. A voice rang out telling him to stop his actions. He stared in silence, noting that the individual that just came in was the Marshal of the Martial Alliance. We open with Gwen looking worriedly at the door, concerned for what the Marshal might do. Zane, though, looks indifferent, only thinking of what actions he might need to take to escape. The Marshal notices his expression as his subordinates point their weapons at him, and he wonders if Zane knows who he is, to which Zane replies he does, noticing his badge, telling him he's probably of a managerial position in the Martial Alliance. The Marshal smirks, confirming his suspicion, walking closer to him slowly and ominously. He says he's been told that he's received a report of his assault of the townspeople, to which Zane questions. Just then, the broken-nosed man speaks up, telling the Marshal it was more than just assault. It's revealed that he's the one who reported this incident to the Marshal, to Zane's disdain. He continues, telling the Marshal that Zane knocked his big brother unconscious and knocked his teeth out enough that he might not be able to eat normally anymore. The Marshal then questions Zane, to which Zane replies it was only in self-defense. The Marshal repeats it as a question. Zane then points out the fact that it was a 9 versus 1 and most of them were carrying weapons. The Marshal points out that he's unscathed. He simply reports that the members were extremely incompetent, to which the Marshal chuckles at the comment. The Marshal wonders if anyone was killed in the exchange, to which Zane replies an obvious no. The whiny man then speaks up, barking at the branch manager, asking him why Zane isn't arrested yet, seeing that his brother is knocked out and his nose is broken, to which the manager looks back in silence and disgust, while stroking his mustache and thinking of his next course of action. He even looks back to his guards and tells them to arrest the man, to which they agree. The whiny man then smirks and chuckles, telling Zane that he's messed with the wrong person, saying it wouldn't work against the Martial Alliance, despite the men sneaking up from behind him. Expressionless and swiftly, he's then surprised at the turn of events that he's the one that will be arrested instead. Zane then looks in confusion. The man then questions the branch manager, asking him what all this is about. He then retorts if 9 fell to 1, what reason would he have to put up with these insolent buffoons any longer? To which the man chokes up at having no response to his question. The manager then continues, saying that the only people amongst them that pretended like they knew martial arts were his bigger brother and him. But if it's only him, he can take him on easily, saying that the rest would be taken care of by his subordinates. The man, unaware of his position in this argument, asks him what he thinks his brother would do when he wakes up, only for him to call in more people at that moment to take care of the entire group, saying that the only thing he'll be looking at is the bars of a prison cell. Zane thinks that he's really just showing off as they tie up all of the criminals and subordinates. Just then, Zane prepares to leave, gathering his items, though he's called by the marshal, who questions his skill, seeing that he took care of a martial artist even if he was a bad one. Swiftly, he pries a little further, wanting to know where his skills were obtained from, to which Zane has no reply and simply walks past him, tossing the barkeep a lump sum of money, apologizing for the damage he caused within the facilities and paying for the food that he ate, still ignoring the man and eventually walking out of the bar to depart for his next journey. The marshal then compliments his respectful demeanor, as the door is closed, signifying his final time being in that place. The scene then cuts to the outskirts of the town and a path leading outward for travelers to follow as we see Zane riding along the path, exiting to head to his next destination, while he's called by an individual that's revealed to be Gwen trailing behind him as he offers to accompany him on his journey, saying they should travel together. Gwen then praises Zane, saying that he took care of the town's problems and couldn't believe that he's being chased out like this, asking why the branch manager acted like that, seeing that he's their savior, to which Zane replies it was only natural, seeing that he did cause a commotion and his job is to catch criminals, so to make it easier on the marshal he offered to leave as soon as he could, knowing it would be a cleaner exit. Then Gwen thinks that seeing that the branch manager didn't do his managerial duties and Zane did, could he really kick him out in front of the townspeople? Going on, he starts informing Zane that patrollers from the Martial Alliance would make their trips around there and starts yapping, saying that the branch manager thought of him as an opportunity, seeing that the patrols are coming closer, stating that the branch manager is an opportunist and ending off with there hadn't been a good member among the Martial Alliance that he has seen. To which Zane doesn't engage with his banter and simply stays silent. He then goes on even more, saying that they're all opportunists like that old man, and if they really knew how to get anything done they wouldn't have joined the Martial Alliance. Just before he can ask Zane to do a job with him, they stop at a fork in the road with two directions, to which Zane asks Gwen where he's headed, and Gwen replies asking the same, though Zane simply replies wherever he isn't, trying to get across the hint that Gwen isn't welcome around him. Gwen stays surprised, questioning what he means, though Zane finishes saying he hopes they never cross paths again, and if he were to be followed, he'll break his legs, so for him to do whatever he wishes. Before Gwen could finish his statement, Zane, done with him, just rides off into the distance, ignoring Gwen's pleas, which Gwen then backhandedly remarks, asking who Zane thinks he is, all that, remarking he didn't look like he was raised as a hermit, making Gwen think he should investigate him before remarking that getting chased out of town before the sunset was awful luck. Scene cuts, and we see Zane's camping spot as he pours himself a cup of water and drinks it stoically before spitting it out abruptly, thinking it tastes like piss. His horse then looks up at him and laughs at his misfortune before laying down and falling asleep. Also, as an FYI, if you didn't know, horses lay down when they're in a comfortable environment or around something they trust. The small detail is important, keep it in mind. Zane, already pissed off, jokingly thinks he should sell the horse. We then see him gazing off into the distance stoically, thinking about the marshal's question about where he learned martial arts from. He then sarcastically remarks, from martial arts manuals, obviously, to which he looks down and ponders his past, remembering that he was in the city prior to this, and a child ran across the street, which he obviously had to jump in front of and get isekai'd by Truck-kun. Of course, another Truck-kun victim gets struck again, where the onlookers at that moment stared at the scene in awe and shock as it pans out to reveal the aftermath. Then we get a sick photo of the night sky while we see Zane cursing at his unfortunate fate after he puts his hat on to rest for the night, him still pondering the events, asking the world why he ended up in a strange place like this. If you liked the video, please drop a like, and if you have any manga/manhwa suggestions, or general complaints about the content's format, drop them in the comments below. Thanks for watching.